In the world of royal protocol, every gesture is calculated, every smile rehearsed, and every public appearance scripted down to the minute. But what happens when genuine emotion breaks through the carefully constructed facade? What occurs when a princess becomes simply a fan, her royal composure giving way to the raw thrill of sport? On a crisp March afternoon at Twickenham Stadium, Catherine, Princess of Wales, would discover that some moments are too powerful for protocol to contain. The roar of 82,000 voices would soon test the boundaries between duty and passion, between the woman who wears the crown and the supporter who bleeds red and white for England. The morning mist hung low over Windsor as Catherine adjusted the collar of her cream wool coat, catching her reflection in the ornate mirror of her dressing room. Today felt different somehow, charged with an energy that had nothing to do with royal obligations and everything to do with the anticipation thrumming through her veins. The Six Nations Championship always brought this feeling, but today's match against Ireland carried extra weight. She had been England's rugby patron for 3 years now, a role that initially felt like another checkbox in her endless list of royal duties. But somewhere between her first tentative wave at Twickenham and learning the intricacies of scrums and lineouts, something unexpected had happened. The sport had claimed her heart. "Your Royal Highness, the car is ready," announced her private secretary, appearing in the doorway with practiced discretion. Catherine nodded, taking one last look at herself. The coat was perfect for the March weather, professional yet approachable, but it was her eyes that told the real story. They sparkled with an excitement that no amount of royal training could fully suppress. The drive to Twickenham Stadium took 45 minutes through London's bustling streets. As they approached the venue, Catherine could see streams of supporters making their way toward the iconic rugby ground. England fans in their crisp white jerseys walked alongside Irish supporters draped in emerald green, the friendly rivalry evident in their good-natured banter. She watched a father lift his young daughter onto his shoulders, both wearing matching England scarves. The little girl's face was painted with a red rose on her cheek, her excitement infectious even from behind the tinted windows of the royal car. Catherine smiled, remembering her own children's reaction when she told them about today's match. George had insisted on wearing his England shirt to school, while Charlotte had asked if she could paint her face like the supporters on television. The royal motorcade pulled through the special entrance at Twickenham, past security barriers and into the heart of rugby's cathedral. Catherine could feel the energy of the crowd even before stepping out of the car. The stadium was already alive with anticipation, the sound of thousands of voices creating a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the very ground. As she emerged from the vehicle, photographers immediately began capturing every step. Catherine moved with practiced grace, acknowledging the waiting officials with warm smiles and firm handshakes. But her eyes kept drifting toward the stadium itself, toward the field where in just a few hours, 30 men would battle for national pride and championship glory. "The atmosphere is incredible today," remarked Sir Bill Beaumont, the chairman of World Rugby, as he escorted her through the VIP entrance. "The rivalry between England and Ireland always brings out the best in both sets of supporters." Catherine nodded enthusiastically. "I can feel it already. There's something special about Six Nations rugby, isn't there? The history, the passion, the way entire nations come together for 80 minutes. Her knowledge of the game had grown exponentially since becoming patron. What started as memorizing basic facts for public appearances had evolved into genuine understanding and appreciation. She knew the players' names, their positions, their strengths and weaknesses. She understood the tactical nuances that could make or break a match. The Royal Box at Twickenham offered the perfect vantage point, elevated above the pitch with unobstructed views of every blade of grass. As Catherine took her seat, she surveyed the sea of supporters filling the stadium. The England fans had created a wall of white on one side, their songs and chants already echoing around the ground. The Irish supporters responded in kind, their green jerseys creating a vibrant contrast as they sang traditional songs that seemed to carry the spirit of their homeland. "Your Royal Highness," called out a voice from behind her. Catherine turned to see James Haskell, the former England player who now worked as a television pundit. "Predictions for today?" Catherine's eyes lit up with the question. "Well, Ireland are the defending Grand Slam champions, so they'll be confident. But England at Twickenham is always dangerous. Owen Farrell's goal-kicking could be crucial, and if our forward pack can dominate the breakdown." She paused, realizing she was perhaps showing more tactical knowledge than expected. "I think it's going to be very close." Haskell grinned. "You've certainly done your homework, ma'am. The players will be delighted to know their patron understands the game so well." As kickoff approached, Catherine felt the familiar flutter of nerves that came before big matches. It was the same feeling she remembered from watching William play polo, or from her own competitive sailing days. The difference was that today, she wasn't just watching sport, she was representing her country's hopes and dreams. The teams emerged from the tunnel to a deafening roar. Catherine stood with everyone else, her hand instinctively moving to her heart as the national anthem began. The camera found her in the crowd, and viewers at home saw something they rarely witnessed: genuine, unguarded emotion on the face of a senior royal. As "God Save the King" echoed around Twickenham, Catherine sang along with obvious pride. Her voice might have been lost in the crowd, but her passion was unmistakable. This wasn't duty anymore. This was personal. The Irish anthem followed, and Catherine respectfully observed the silence, but her mind was already racing ahead to the first whistle. She had studied the team selections the night before, noting England's decision to start with Marcus Smith at fly-half and the recall of veteran prop Dan Cole to the front row. Ireland, meanwhile, had made minimal changes to their Grand Slam winning side, a statement of confidence from Andy Farrell's team. As the anthems concluded and the players took their positions, Catherine leaned forward slightly in her seat. The Royal Protocol Manual probably had something to say about maintaining proper posture at all times, but right now, she was simply a fan waiting for the action to begin. The referee raised his whistle, and 82,000 people held their breath. Catherine's fingers gripped the edge of her program, her knuckles slightly white with anticipation. Whatever happened in the next 80 minutes would test not just the players on the field, but the woman in the royal box who had discovered that some passions run deeper than protocol. The whistle blew, and rugby's greatest rivalry exploded into life once more. The first collision between the packs sent a shockwave through Twickenham that Catherine felt in her bones. Within seconds of kickoff, the brutal poetry of rugby was in full display as bodies crashed together with bone-jarring force. She winced instinctively as England's hooker Jamie George was driven backward by the Irish pack, the sound of the impact audible even in the royal box. "Good Lord," she murmured, immediately catching herself. "Royal composure, Catherine." But the raw intensity of elite rugby had a way of stripping away pretense, even from those trained from birth to maintain it. Ireland struck first blood through a Johnny Sexton penalty after England were caught offside at a ruck. The Irish supporters erupted in celebration, their songs growing louder as they sensed early momentum. Catherine felt her stomach tighten. She had studied enough rugby to know that early scores could be psychological hammers, especially in matches of this magnitude. England's response came through their lineout, one of their traditional strengths. Maro Itoje soared above the Irish jumpers like a graceful giant, his timing perfect as he plucked the ball from the air. The roar from the home supporters was deafening, and Catherine found herself applauding enthusiastically, her training momentarily forgotten in the heat of competition. "Beautiful lineout work," she said to the RFU official beside her, then immediately wondered if she sounded too casual. But the man's face lit up with genuine pleasure at her knowledge. "Indeed, Your Royal Highness. Itoje is world-class in those situations." The game settled into a pattern of territorial chess, both teams probing for weaknesses while respecting each other's strengths. Ireland's pack, led by the towering presence of James Ryan, seemed determined to physically dominate their hosts. Every ruck became a battlefield, every scrum a test of collective will. Catherine watched Marcus Smith receive the ball 20 meters from the Irish line, his feet dancing as he looked for space that simply didn't exist. The Irish defense, drilled to perfection under Andy Farrell's coaching, rushed up in perfect synchronization. Smith was forced to kick, and Catherine exhaled in frustration as the opportunity slipped away. "He's so young," she found herself saying. "The pressure must be enormous." The comment drew knowing nods from those around her. At just 24, Smith carried the hopes of English rugby on his shoulders, tasked with filling the massive boots left by previous fly-half legends. Catherine had met him briefly before the match, struck by his quiet confidence and obvious intelligence. Now, watching him navigate the intense pressure of international rugby, she felt almost maternal concern for the young player. Ireland extended their lead through another Sexton penalty, this time after England's front row collapsed a scrum. Catherine bit her lip as she watched the replay on the stadium's giant screen. The technical aspects of scrummaging had taken her months to understand, but now she could see exactly what had gone wrong. England's prop had angled his bind incorrectly, allowing the Irish pack to drive through and earn the penalty. At 6-0 down, England needed something special. It came from an unexpected source. George Ford, who had replaced Smith at fly-half in a tactical substitution, spotted space behind the Irish winger. His grubber kick was perfectly weighted, bouncing kindly for England's wing Anthony Watson. The speedster gathered cleanly and touched down in the corner as Twickenham exploded around him. Catherine leaped to her feet without thinking, her hands flying to her face in shock and delight. The conversion was missed, leaving England trailing 6-5, but the momentum had shifted dramatically. The royal box erupted around her, and, for a moment, she was just another supporter caught up in the magic of the moment. "Sorry," she said, sitting back down with a slightly embarrassed smile. "Got carried away." "Don't apologize, ma'am," laughed a former England captain sitting nearby. "That's exactly how rugby should be watched." The intensity ratcheted up another level as both teams sensed the match could swing either way. Ireland's captain, Johnny Sexton, orchestrated their attacks with the precision of a master conductor, his experience evident in every decision. When space opened on the left wing, his crossfield kick found Hugo Keenan in acres of space. Only a desperate tackle from England's fullback prevented certain try. Catherine's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. She hadn't realized how invested she had become, not just in the outcome but in every tackle, every ruck, every strategic decision. This wasn't merely royal duty anymore, she was experiencing the pure, unadulterated joy and agony of being a fan. The physical toll of the contest was becoming evident. Both packs showed the strain of their collisions, players grimacing as they picked themselves up from rucks. Catherine watched England's hooker Jamie George receive treatment for a cut above his eye, blood streaming down his face as the medics worked quickly to stem the flow. "It's so brutal," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Yet she couldn't look away. There was something magnificent about the commitment these men showed, the way they threw their bodies into contact without hesitation, driven by pride and passion for their countries. Halftime arrived with Ireland clinging to their 1-point lead. As the teams disappeared into the tunnel, Catherine finally allowed herself to relax slightly. Her shoulders, she realized, had been tensed for the entire 40 minutes. "Incredible intensity," observed Sir Bill Beaumont as they were served refreshments in the royal box. "Both teams are giving everything." Catherine nodded, accepting a cup of tea but barely registering the gesture. Her mind was already analyzing what she had seen, thinking about the adjustments both teams might make for the second half. England's scrum had struggled, but their lineout was functioning well. Ireland looked slightly more comfortable in possession, but England's defense had been heroic at times. "What do you think England need to do differently?" asked James Haskell, clearly impressed by her obvious engagement with the tactical battle. Catherine considered the question seriously. "Their breakdown work has been good, but they need to be more clinical in Ireland's 22. They've had chances but haven't quite been sharp enough to finish them." She paused, then added with a smile, "Though I suspect Eddie Jones and the coaching staff know that better than I do." The compliment to England's coaching staff was diplomatically perfect, but her analysis had been spot on. As if to prove her point, England emerged for the second half with a noticeably more aggressive mindset around Ireland's try line. The second half began with an incident that would become the match's turning point. Ireland's lock, James Ryan, was shown a yellow card for a high tackle on England's centre Henry Slade. The decision looked harsh even on replay, but the Irish giant had no choice but to trudge toward the sin bin. Catherine felt the surge of excitement around Twickenham as England realized they had a golden opportunity. With Ireland down to 14 men for 10 crucial minutes, this was their chance to seize control of the match. What followed was some of the most intense rugby Catherine had ever witnessed. England battered at Ireland's defensive line like waves against rocks, their forward pack carrying repeatedly into the green wall. Each phase brought them closer, each tackle from Ireland more desperate than the last. the noise was overwhelming. 82,000 people urging England forward, willing them to break through Ireland's heroic defense. Catherine found herself leaning further and further forward in her seat, unconsciously mimicking the body language of supporters around the stadium. "Come on, England," she heard herself shout, the words escaping before she could stop them. Several heads turned in surprise, but the former England captain beside her just grinned and nodded approvingly. England's breakthrough came through their captain, Owen Farrell. The fly-half spotted a gap between Ireland's centres and stepped through it like a man walking through an open door. His acceleration in the confined space was remarkable, and, as he touched down beneath the posts, Twickenham erupted in the kind of celebration that shakes stadiums to their foundations. Catherine was on her feet again, this time making no apology for her enthusiasm. This was her team, her country, her sport now, and protocol could wait. The conversion was successful, putting England 12-6 ahead and transforming the entire complexion of the match. But Ireland, proud and defiant, weren't finished. As James Ryan returned from the sin bin, they launched their own assault on England's line. Wave after wave of green jerseys crashed against the white defensive wall, probing for the weakness that would unlock the door to a famous victory. With 10 minutes remaining, they found it. The try that leveled the match came from a moment of pure Irish brilliance that left Catherine breathless. Bundy Aki, Ireland's powerful centre, took a short pass from Johnny Sexton and somehow found a gap that hadn't existed a second before. His powerful legs drove him through 3 English tacklers before he offloaded to the supporting Hugo Keenan, who dove over the line with defenders draped around him. The Irish supporters exploded with joy that seemed to shake the very foundations of Twickenham. Their songs, momentarily silenced by England's earlier try, now rang out with renewed passion. Catherine felt her heart sink as she watched the conversion sail between the posts, bringing Ireland level at 12-12. "My goodness," she whispered, her hands pressed to her face. The emotional roller coaster was unlike anything she had experienced in years of royal engagements. This raw, unfiltered drama couldn't be rehearsed or scripted. It simply had to be lived. With 8 minutes remaining, both teams seemed to realize that everything they had worked for throughout the championship came down to these final, precious moments. The tackles became harder, the rucks more ferocious, the intensity almost unbearable to watch. Catherine noticed her breathing had become shallow, matching the rhythm of the crowd around her. Every England attack brought fresh hope, every Irish counterattack sent fresh waves of anxiety through her chest. She had attended hundreds of official functions, met world leaders, handled countless high-pressure situations with grace and composure. None of it had prepared her for the pure emotional intensity of being a genuine sports fan. England earned a penalty 35 meters out, slightly to the left of the posts. Owen Farrell, England's goal-kicking specialist, had slotted similar kicks thousands of times in his career. But this one carried the weight of national expectation, championship dreams, and home pride. The stadium fell silent as Farrell began his routine. Catherine found herself holding her breath, her fingernails digging into her palms. She watched the England captain's measured approach, his practiced rhythm unchanged despite the pressure. The ball left his boot in a perfect spiral, arcing high above the crossbar with room to spare. Twickenham erupted. Catherine leaped from her seat, her composure finally abandoned completely. "Yes," she shouted, her voice lost in the cacophony but her joy unmistakable. England led 15-12 with 5 minutes to play. But Ireland weren't done. They had won Grand Slams by never giving up, by finding ways to win when victories seemed impossible. As they gathered around Johnny Sexton for one final push, Catherine could see the determination etched on their faces. This was championship rugby at its finest, no quarter asked, none given. The final minutes passed in a blur of desperate attacks and heroic defense. Ireland threw everything at England's line, their forwards carrying with the fury of men possessed. Each phase seemed to last forever, each tackle a small victory in the greater war. Catherine found herself gripping the arm of her chair, her knuckles white with tension. She had never experienced sport like this before, where every second mattered, where the difference between glory and heartbreak could be measured in inches. With 2 minutes left, Ireland won a scrum 22 meters from England's try line. The set piece had been a battle all afternoon, but now it became the fulcrum on which the entire match balanced. Catherine watched the 8 Irish forwards bind together, their faces set with grim determination. The scrum collapsed. The referee's whistle cut through the noise like a blade, and his arm pointed toward England's posts. Penalty to Ireland. Johnny Sexton, Ireland's nerveless goalkicker, would have the chance to win the match with virtually the final play. The silence that descended on Twickenham was profound and eerie. 82,000 people holding their breath simultaneously, waiting for one man to shape their immediate destiny. Catherine felt tears pricking at her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming emotion of the moment. She watched Sexton's routine, noting the way he blocked out the noise, the pressure, the magnitude of the kick. His experience showed in every movement, the calm professionalism of a player who had been in these situations countless times before. The kick was struck cleanly, powerfully. Catherine watched its flight, her heart in her throat, time seeming suspended as the ball arced through the London sky. For a moment, it looked good. Then, agonizingly, it began to drift left. The ball struck the left post with a metallic clang that echoed around the stadium like a gunshot. It bounced back into play, and, with it, Ireland's championship hopes fell to earth. The final whistle blew seconds later, and Twickenham exploded in celebration. England had won 15-12, but, more than that, they had won with their hearts, their courage, their refusal to surrender when the pressure was at its greatest. Catherine stood with tears streaming down her face, not caring who saw or what the photographers might capture. This was pure joy, unfiltered by protocol or expectation. She applauded until her hands hurt, her smile so wide it made her cheeks ache. "That was incredible," she said to Sir Bill Beaumont, her voice hoarse from shouting. "Absolutely incredible." The presentations that followed passed in a happy blur. Catherine shook hands with players from both teams, offering congratulations to England's heroes and gracious commiserations to Ireland's beaten warriors. But it was her conversation with Owen Farrell that would be remembered most. "That kick to take the lead," she said, gripping the England captain's hand. "I don't think I've ever been more nervous watching anything in my life." Farrell grinned, still glowing from victory. "Makes 2 of us, Your Royal Highness. But that's why we play the game, isn't it? For moments like these." As she prepared to leave Twickenham, Catherine took one last look at the stadium. The crowd was dispersing, but the atmosphere lingered like smoke. She had arrived as the patron of English rugby, dutiful and professional. She was leaving as something else entirely, a fan, converted by the passion and beauty of the sport. The drive back through London gave her time to reflect on what had happened. She had experienced something rare and precious, genuine, uncomplicated emotion in a public setting. No diplomacy required, no careful balance of competing interests. Just pure support for her team and her country. Her phone buzzed with messages from William and the children, who had watched the match on television. George's text made her laugh. "Mom, you looked properly mental celebrating." "It was brilliant." Charlotte had sent a video of herself recreating Catherine's celebration jump in their living room, complete with royal wave afterward. Even Lewis had contributed a drawing of what he called Mummy at the Rugby, showing a stick figure with a crown jumping very high. That evening, as she changed out of her matchday outfit, Catherine caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her hair was slightly disheveled from the emotion of the afternoon, her makeup requiring some repair, but her eyes still sparkled with the afterglow of victory. She thought about the thousands of rugby fans making their way home through London, reliving every tackle, every kick, every moment of drama. For 80 minutes that afternoon, she had been one of them, not the Princess of Wales, not a royal patron, just another supporter living and dying with every play. The official photographs from the match would show her in moments of elegant composure, suitable for palace walls and newspaper supplements. But she would always treasure the memory of losing herself completely in the raw emotion of sport, of discovering that some experiences are too powerful for protocol to contain. As she prepared for bed, Catherine smiled at the thought of next year's Six Nations. She was already looking forward to it, not as a duty to be fulfilled, but as a passion to be embraced. The game had claimed her heart completely, and she couldn't imagine it any other way. The Princess of Wales had become a fan, and, in that transformation, she had found something precious, the simple, pure joy of supporting your team with everything you have, regardless of who might be watching. Rugby had given her back a piece of herself she hadn't realized was missing, and, for that, she would always be grateful.